Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trek Canon. So, today I'm going to be doing a review of Season 4, Episode 5 of Star Trek Discovery Examples. Now, where should I start on this episode? Where should I even begin? You know, I'll be so excited about coming to sit home and, coming home and watching some Star Trek, even Discovery. Every episode I have such high hopes, so grandiose expectations and dreams and aspirations that today, maybe this time, but please don't let me please don't let me give the impression that today's episode was jacked up. It was just the information presented. Some of it was real questionable. So let's just jump right into it. I took some notes, man, because here we go. So right off the bat, we hear about USS Janeway, which I wish that they would have included more in the evacuate. Okay, so spoilers, everybody. Spoilers. Y'all know how I roll, though. But spoilers. So if you haven't watched the episode, go watch the episode. Come on back, man. Start the video up, man, and let's pick back up where we left off, man. But we get to see the USS Janeway, and for a split second, way off in the distance somewhere. And let me begin by saying that there is a main storyline, of course, and there's some sub storylines, and we'll get into those as we kind of progress through this particular review. I'm gonna try not to make this a long review because it has no need to be a long review. So, like I said, it's an evacuation that's going on with an Emerald Chain colony. All right, and that's the main storyline. Now, like I said, they've one of the ships involved in that particular evacuation is the USS Janeway, which again, I wish that they would have shown more, or at least gave us some scenes from the inside of it. Maybe a bridge shot, something along those lines, but they didn't. So, um, one of the adjacent storylines going on is this guy named Tarka who comes on board to basically help Stamets conduct an experiment to figure out what's controlling this anomaly. Now, I'll get more into Tarka in a minute, and I'll get more into Tarka in a minute. But they start, the admiral and everybody, he's giving a briefing to the captain and Saru about uh, what's going on with, maybe who's behind creating this anomaly. And one of the people that they mention is the Q continuum. And they also mention that nobody's heard from the Q continuum for at least 600 years, placing that right in line with the Picard season 2 and Picard season 1 that's going to be going on and has went on. So it's interesting that the people in Discovery were paid enough attention to detail to notice that, to whereas they can at least blend those two, the link between Discovery and Picard series, in a way that they don't have to do later and explain something that's just stupid. Now, one of the other species that they named was the Metrons. All right, now the Metrons were featured in the original series, The Arena, and I'm nothing about the Metrons. The only thing that would lead towards the Metrons being around, for anything that got to do with this, would be that the Metrons basically was like, yo, um, contact us in 1,000 years, man, and we'll see, if we could talk about some things and, everything like that. But the thing is, the Metrons, they weren't, that's not their thing. Or as far as making an anomaly like this to go around and destroy things, they were more into trying to figure out which one was stronger, good or evil. All right. Now, they're the ones who pitted Captain Kirk against the Gorn on that planet in the famous episode, like I said, the Arena. Now, one of the other races that they said was the Iconians. Now, come on, man. Now, I don't really consider. I know a lot of people consider Star Trek Online canon. All right. Like I said at the beginning of this channel, the things that I talk about as far as canon were things that are shown in film. Now, the Iconians in film are a dead race. Okay, and why would the Iconians do this? Things that we know from the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, never pointed to the Iconians as being warlike. The only thing that pointed to the Iconians as being warlike was the people who banded together to defeat the Iconians. All right. Basically, what we learned about the Iconians is that they were eliminated because of people being fearful of their level of technology. All right. Now, another one of the people was the Hassim. Now, we get into what's going on with the Emerald Chain and the evacuation, like I said, of this particular colony. And when we get to this colony, we find out that most of the prisoners have been evacuated, except for five prisoners that were are called the examples. They weren't considered for evacuation because basically these people are basically on death row, so it would be considered a waste of time for them to go and help them. But Burnham, being a Federation and Starfleet officer, decides that, hey, yeah, we here to evacuate everybody. All life is important, and that's what we're going to do. Now, one of the things that they come across is these mobile landmines that look like beetles, Egyptian beetles, horned beetles or whatever they, called. Now, except for larger. Now, the thing is that why would the Orions or the Emerald Chain make mobile mines that look like an earth insect? Like, what would be. Now, I know it's not an earth insect because Burnham, she was so kind to express and let us know what they were. But why would they do that? Why would they make them into that? Um, that's not really the most effective things. If you think about really effective landmines, think about the mines from, say, the episode of Deep Space Nine, Siege of AR 358, or something like that. All right. And those particular mines that the Dominion used. Now, those were more effective mines, you would think. But basically, they get in here, and let's talk about this because as this particular plot started, I was very interested to see where they went with it. There were so many possibilities that they could have explored with the examples that they chose not to go into for some strange reason. They decided to start talking about things that were unnecessary, especially during the under the conditions and time restraints that they were under. I considered that whole interaction of what they were talking about unnecessary at that for that moment. They could have got into, hey, the more into the injustices, why these injustices, the structure of the system, and all that kind of stuff. That, say, for instance, Kirk would have handled in the original series, or how the Next Generation would have handled it, or even Deep Space Nine would have handled it. Now, there was a lot of missed opportunities for that right there. I wasn't really impressed. And the thing is that out of all the examples, the only one that really stood out that had any type of meat of the story was the one that I can only assume was a Native American. And the reason I say that is because they gave him the Chakotay Native American music every time he had his monologue going. Now, um, he was an interesting character, but I think that his sacrifice, I think they tried to put so much into it, but missed the mark. And if you've seen the episode, you know what I mean. Now, let's talk about Tarka. He's a Ryzen. All right. Now, when I found out that he was a Ryzen, it totally explained his openness and directness because that's how they are on Ryza. They're very open and direct. All right. Now, the thing about him is he kind of reminded me of a Tony Stark. You know what I mean? He put off that Tony Stark type vibe. His eccentricism, his his intelligence, you know, his confidence, or as I like to call it, overconfidence or arrogance, and everything like that. But the things, how he interacted with everybody was direct, truthful. He was a high risk type of scientist, and that's another type of thing, you know. Which one, you know, where you always have to have somebody, and I'm happy that they had Saru in this. You always have to have somebody to keep in check scientists because a scientist, their motivation is the science, the information. And sometimes, a lot of times, they can go beyond, um, they can risk a lot and endanger a lot of people and themselves in that endeavor. And it was several nice little quotes in here, actually. And that, well, I'll talk about that real quick. It's really nice to have a Star Trek episode that is quotable at the end. It gives you things that are said that you can think about or say to people that you know will have meaning. And this episode, although the episode missed the mark as far as I think what they were trying to do, which was what should have been push the story, address in to address injustice, you know, to address systems of injustice. They missed the mark a lot on that, but they still had a lot of great quotes. And one in particular I remember is the one where he was like, nothing, no great experiment or something like that was ever achieved without, you know, through, you know, without the application of caution. And Tig Notaro, oh, by the way, it's nice to see Tig Notaro back. I think they brought her back because they need somebody to fill Tilly's place to bring some type of counterbalance to the dread and darkness of the show. Okay, but it's still nice to see Tig Notaro. I like her dark. I like her dry sense of humor. Now she was basically like, no, I don't think that's exactly true, and I'm happy that they put that in there to not let that go in a show that's based historically on the application of positive science or understanding why bad science failed. Now, let's talk about, yeah, as I was talking about with for instance, Tarka being reminding me of that guy. They were basically trying to figure out what type of power is needed to control this device because to control this anomaly. Because what they figured out is that the DMT is artificially made, which is what I was talking about earlier at the beginning of the video. So they decide to make a wormhole and basically have it contained on both ends to try to replicate the DMT in under control situations. Now, they end up replicating it and getting very good readings, but never getting it to stabilize. And Saru, because the containment field was almost dropping to zero, ends up cutting the experiment short. Okay, which is great because why get the information and then you are destroyed and nobody can gain anything from what you learned. Okay, so find a better way to contain your things. Now with Tarka, he ends up talking to Book at the end of the episode. They end up having a interaction at the bar. All right. Now, what's interesting is that we get the impression that Tarka has an idea of who's behind controlling this device. And we find out the power required based on Tucker's observations and experiments that the power required is astronomical, almost godlike. Now, Tarka, before he ends up leaving, rubs the back of his neck where we see that there's scarring. Now, people usually don't put things like that or bring attention to things like that unless they bear some type of importance. Now, what is the only things that we are aware of that would produce a scar like that, or would have reason to have a scar like that on the back of the neck. And only few things that I could think of, and just one right off the bat, would be those invading aliens that had the horn that stuck out the back of the neck from season one of The Next Generation. Now, I don't know how they would incorporate that being the scenario, and I'm going out on a limb as that being something that's the basis of that scar on his neck. But the only other thing I could think of is a Matrix connection, and Matrix has nothing to do with Star Trek. So, well, I could get into a whole thing on that because there's a lot of similar. Anyway, so one of the things I wanted to talk about was the Starfleet body armor that was worn during the rescue, during the evacuation and the rescue, and I really liked it. I loved the design that they had for it. I thought that that was a nice, like I always say, the production of these Star Trek Discovery episodes, top notch, movie level. Story and writing, not top notch, not movie level. Okay, now one of the other things was this value of, let me see, the possibilities presented by the examples was missed, like I was saying. um, at the end we find out that this the Loki orb that the prisoner that I was talking about earlier, prisoner number 5, was sacrificing himself, well, not really sacrificing himself for it. He was having a penance moment that this is something that he did. And when when they told the story, when he told his story of what he did was real jacked up. But I'm gonna have to agree in this point with Book. It would have been more poignant of an episode if they were able to convince him to that penance can come in many ways, the least of which is death and sacrifice. All right. But I had to agree with Mariner's decision, not Mariner, the captain's decision that we have to obey his wishes, because Starfleet can't go around just taking people off planets against their wishes. It's called abduction. All right. So I'm happy that they stuck with that. Okay. Even if that was the route they decided to take with the story. Now, Zora. Let's talk about Zora, the computer. First, the sphere data, for that sphere to be going around, accumulating as much information as it did, joining with the main CPU of the Discovery, becoming emotionally aware recently, it still offers nothing as far as information or um, uh, maybe nothing. Every time they ask it about something that has to do with an anomaly or anything of substance, it really doesn't know. So I'm trying to figure out when they're going to start incorporating the information that the sphere incorporated into Zora. When they're going to start actually utilizing that, or being able to utilize that, or go into that. Now, another one of the things that I want to talk about as far as the final part of the story subplots was Dr. Coburn. All right. Now, he's going through some things, and we find out that he's going through basically guilt about being alive, and why is he worthy of such a gift? All right. He's also having issue with what he feels is a counselor lying to people in their face, trying to reassure them that the anomaly, everything's going to be okay and all this types of things. Now, we go into, I guess, the saying of who counsels the counselor, for this. And we get, I forget what his name is, but this guy right here, he's always awesome. But we get into a conversation between him and the doctor, that where this guy's just brutally honest. He's as honest and direct as we expect him to be. Still think that he's part of Section 31, but whatever. Um, and but it was handled really well in the amount of time that they interacted. All right, although it was direct, although it was brutal in its application, you know what I mean. It was still, it still had an effect on the doctor, and the doctor was still able to walk away with a perspective that he could draw, that he can draw upon, that he can grow upon. All right, now I wish that this had been a situation where Guinan had been on board. I would have loved to have seen how Guinan handled that particular interaction with the doctor, you know, because Guinan, to me, is the counselor's counselor. So, but in all, I thought the episode, it was okay. You know, it was okay. Um, like I said, the positives were top-notch production as always, top-notch uniforms, the addition of the Starfleet battle armor that was nice, you know, but the things that they could have done that they didn't do with the examples, with the prisoners, the things that they could have went in with that and chose not to, um, how they left, how they decided to write the prisoner sacrificing himself instead of finding a more a harder way, you know, just like I said at the quote at the beginning, which is something that was another great quote from the episode. You know, they should have found a not so easy way to exit that instead of what they chose. So tell me what you guys thought. If you guys liked the episode, in the comments, you know, as always, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for staying with me through the entire video if you did. And as always, peace, recycle, and say the whales. You guys be cool.